Let's bring in our political editor, Andrew Clennell, with some significant other news today on the very important migration and skills front.
Thanks, Kieran. A week after the Labor government announced an increase in the permanent migration level to the highest number since the mid-1980s, I sat down with the Home Affairs Minister Clare O'Neil. I should point out this interview occurred prior to the Queen's death. Well, Minister, thanks for your time. A significant investor visa, people basically paying to live here and hardly any rejected on character grounds. What can you tell us about this?
So, Andrew, I think it's a really big problem, actually, in the immigration system. I think most Australians would be pretty offended by the idea that we've got a visa category here where effectively you can buy your way into the country. One of the things that people probably don't know about this visa is actually the lifetime impact on the Australian budget is negative. It's actually costing us for on average every person, because these are people who are generally coming in quite a late stage of their life, often at the end of their business career, and coming to Australia basically, you know, to settle down and retire. Now, that's not a productive use, I don't think, of our migration system. So that's one reason why in the recent revamp to the immigration program that was announced at the Jobs Summit, the number of visas in this program was roughly halved for this year. But it is a visa program that I think isn't adding value to the country, and it's something that we will be looking at in the context of the review of the immigration program that I've just announced.
So you might abolish it?
Well, I don't see a lot of great benefits to the country currently, and I think that some really important journalism has pointed out that there are some potential security issues here in this visa. So at the moment, I can't see a lot of reasons to maintain it as part of our program.
I wanted to ask about this increase in permanent immigration to 195,000. Where did the government get the figure?
Well, the lead up to the Jobs Summit involved extensive discussions with Australians from all walks of life across the country on this issue of the skills shortage. So whether we were talking to nurses who have been working double and triple shifts and just can't keep going anymore, whether it's people in the bush who can't see a rural GP for weeks at a time when they've got illnesses, whether it's people who are getting flights cancelled here, there and everywhere, all of these things, all of these problems, things disappearing from supermarket shelves come back to the skills shortage in our country. So we spent a long time consulting with all the different groups that we talked to in the lead up to the Jobs Summit, and the consensus number was 195,000.
Can you imagine pre-pandemic doing this without controversy?
No, I can't. And this is actually a really unique moment in our history. You know, we've essentially had effectively very little migration in our country over the last 2 years. In fact, in one of those years was the first time since the war that Australia's population actually went backwards. I actually think this is giving us room and space to have a conversation about migration that should have happened a long time ago. We've spent obsessive years talking about a big Australia, a small Australia, the population size, as though that's the only question in the immigration space that matters, and it's not. What we should have been talking about all that time is who are we bringing here, and what will they bring to the challenges that we face in this in the decades ahead, and that's the conversation that I'm trying to start with Australians at the moment.
With the 195,000, how many are onshore and how many are offshore?
So normally, most of the people who come in through our permanent skilled migration program are onshore. What we are doing is asking our department to prioritise visa applications for people who are offshore, so that will rebalance the numbers. And the reason that we're doing that is because it's not going to help our nurses in this country who are overworked at the moment to have a nurse who might be on a temporary visa come onto a permanent one. We actually do need more people in the country.
Exactly. Have you given any consideration to getting rid of the genuine temporary entry requirement?
No, not at this stage, but this is a sort of structural question about the migration system that we will consider as part of the migration review. So out of the Jobs Summit, we made a decision to address the skills shortage, especially in areas of health, of education, engineering, some of those really critical shortages, in part through the migration system. But we also announced that we are going to do a very extensive review of that system and really question whether this very complex visa set of categories that we have. We've got 70 visa categories, we've got multiple subcategories, all with their own different criteria, whether this is the right way to run the immigration system. And I'll give you a clue, it's absolutely not, so we want to do it better.
All right, we've got something like 130,000 people here who are asylum seekers, and probably about 20,000 of them are temporary protection visa holders. Will they be allowed to stay?
Well, Andrew, the fact that we have got more than 100,000 people in the country who have effectively been living in limbo for a very long period of time isn't good for them, and it's not good for our country. So whether they will stay or not, there's no blanket decision about this. What I would say is it shows us that the migration system wasn't working. We don't want to have a system where people can sit here in the country for 10 years not having an outcome on their migration decision. So what Minister Andrew Giles and I are working on at the moment is just assiduously going through these different categories of what we call legacy caseloads. Of people who have basically gotten trapped in the system somewhere. We need to give these people an answer, and if it means deporting them out of the country, we will do that if we need to. If it means letting them stay, then for God's sake, let's just let them stay so they can get themselves educated and, you know, get their kids into school and start to build a life here. The most important thing is let's not just sit around while these people sit in limbo. It's not good for them and it's not good for us.
And how long do you think it'll take to get through that caseload?
Yeah, I think it's going to take some years. I think it's going to take some years. Well, absolutely, because the former government sat on this problem for 9 years and let these cohorts of people accumulate and did nothing about them. They did not run a functional and effective immigration system in this country, and that is why we have got clumps of people around the country who are in some status of limbo. Now, these people can contribute to the country or they're not entitled to be here, and let's get them out of the country. The problem with the former government was a sense of laziness and inertia about how they manage this system, and we want to do it better.
Because all the media, all the talk is about people coming by boat.
Yeah.
But you've had so many asylum seekers come by air, haven't you?
Yeah.
So how do you stop that?
I think you stop that by trying to make sure that we deal with these problems quickly when they emerge. So, Andrew, one of the large groups within that 130,000 that you mentioned were people who were part of a labour scam, essentially, that was run by a new type of people smuggler across Malaysia and a couple of other countries who were getting people into the country who were on temporary visas and then getting those people to falsely lodge applications for asylum when there was no basis for the claim, and essentially giving them years to be in the country. Now, the people who were trafficked through that scheme, or trafficked is a strong word, I would perhaps not quite put it as strongly as that, but the people who came here on that scheme, they are victims of illegal conduct of these people smugglers, and the former government didn't do anything about it, didn't stop it, didn't try to prosecute anyone, didn't try to take any action against it, and we want to make sure that we run a fair, efficient program that protects our borders and gets the skilled people into the country that we need, and the former government completely failed to do that.
Will there be a lift in the humanitarian program numbers with this greater migration?
So we haven't announced any lift. It is, I think that, you know, as Australians, we're very generous-hearted people, and if we have humanitarian entrants who come in through the means that we set out, which is through the United Nations process, then I think most Australians would like to see us do a little bit more, but there's no current policy setting for us to do that.
When will a decision be made around that?
Well, it's done on a year-by-year basis, so we'll look at it as we progress, but it's certainly an aspiration that we would like to do a bit more.
Now, you kind of dumped, or it's been reported you've dumped the government's previous cyber strategy. What's your plans in this regard?
Well, I think saying we dumped it is a little bit harsh. I think that the former government, you know, I've got plenty of critiques, but there was some important work actually that was done on cyber that we want to extend and build on. The reason that we're starting a new cyber strategy is because if any of your viewers are interested, go and have a look at the old cyber strategy. I think it honestly just totally lacks ambition, and as a country we need to do more and be bigger and bolder with how we think about what is going to be probably the most important security risk that we face coming into the future decades. So we are starting the process of building a new strategy that will think about what the Australian government needs to do to protect ourselves from cyber attack, which will be a central part of any conflict that may occur in the decades ahead, but also how we're going to protect everyday Australians. Almost everyone who's watching your show today will have been subject to email campaigns, someone sending you a WhatsApp message or a text trying to steal your data, get you to send them money, all sorts of different things. We are not providing Australians the support they need to manage those problems at the moment. So there's a government end of this, but there's also just a very basic citizen end where we need to step up our act a little bit on helping people with this problem.
Presumably that means more funding at a time where the budget's under strain. Is that what it's going to require?
Look, I mean, it may do, but we've got to put a strategy in place first and think about what we actually want to do to help Australians with this issue, and then we think about whether that will be costly.
Just finally, a couple of your colleagues have got into a bit of strife, I guess, in terms of their shareholdings. I noticed you haven't had shares, you haven't had to divest. Is this teething problems? Is it frustrating for you as a minister to see more junior ministers not read the code of conduct properly and apply it? Yeah,
well, my financial affairs are very simple. I basically don't own a lot, so it doesn't take me long to fill out these forms. Look, no, I don't think, I don't find it frustrating at all. I'm just, I feel very lucky to work alongside some of the people who've been caught up in this, and I think, they've filled in their forms incorrectly or, not quite understood exactly what the requirements are of them. I think the really important thing is as soon as it's been discovered, they've immediately apologised, dealt with the problem, and at no time has there been any actual conflict of interest. We regard transparency and accountability as paramount values for our government, and it's one of the main critiques we had of the previous 9 years of all of the front benchers, getting into their rorts and going on planes to buy their own private property and all the other things that happened. And I do hope that you'll see something very different from us. So I think what we've had here is just honest mistakes and people have fessed up and dealt with them.
Clare O'Neil, thanks for your time.
Great to talk, Andrew. Thank you.